In order to use the 1099 software, you'll need to have categories set up to mark your vendors for the different reasons they might be issued a 1099. To do that, you'll go to Configuration, System. I'll collapse the view, and we'll go under Data Management to Tracking and User-Defined Fields. I'm going to create mine under Global Tracking, so I'll double-click. And since this is related to vendors, you'll want to click the Vendor tab in the upper right. You'll see that I've created a new tracking group name called 1099 Categories. I've made that a single item group, meaning a vendor can only be assigned to one of them. And I've created 3 items within the group, one called Rent, one called Other Income, and a third called Non-Employee Compensation. The last thing to remember when creating these is to click on the category name at the top and make sure you have used the Expose button to make these categories available to your locations within Procare. Let's go ahead and exit, and we'll assign a tracking code to one of our vendors. I'll go to the Expenses and Ledger module, and we'll look up Medford Property Management, the company I pay rent to, and I will go to the Tracking button. Here I can see the categories Rent, Other Income, and Non-Employee Compensation, and I have marked Medford Property Management as a rent vendor. I'll exit, and then I would go to any other vendors that those other categories might apply to, go to the Tracking button, and mark them appropriately. Then you're ready to use the 1099 software. You'll go to the Procare home screen. Now, if you've already used the software to do your W-2s, your software will already be activated. If you haven't used it for that yet, and this is your first time going to the W-2 1099 software, you will need an activation password. That will appear on your Procare News tab about 1 business day after your order is received, or you can also get it from the Help menu toward the upper right. Go to the Procare Store website and click on your Order History tab to view your activation password. To get into the software, you'll go to Utilities, and you'll choose Procare Extras, then W-2 and 1099. Since I've already been in here before, I'm not asked for an activation code. Then you'll go to Data Source. If you're just starting from scratch with the 1099s, you can go to Select a Region. But since I've already done my W-2s through this software, I'm going to say Load Previously Saved Data. The company information and state ID numbers have already been filled in. If you need to report 1099 state information for another state, you can always use the Add State button. I'm going to go on to Choose Tracking Codes. And this is reminding me that since I've been in here before, if I make any changes, it will reload the information for my vendors. I'm going to say OK. And so I've selected as my vendor tracking category the category we made called 1099 Categories. And then within that, I've mapped or assigned the rent item for box 1 to rent, the other income item in box 3 to other income, and the non-employee compensation item in box 7 to non-employee compensation. And then typically you'll leave this amount at the default setting. This will include vendors who have been paid only over that amount. If for some reason you wanted to make sure all vendors who qualified were issued a 1099, you could set that to a lower amount. I'm going to go ahead and exit, and then you're ready to review and edit your 1099s. My vendors are listed in the upper left. I can click on each one and review it, which I should do. Let me go on and look at Medford Property Management. It'll list the amounts paid to them in the appropriate box. And if this was a vendor for whom I was reporting state-specific information, I could select the state in the lower right. Also, if you needed for some reason to add a vendor who wasn't here, you needed to issue a 1099 to a vendor who's not been recorded in the Expenses and Ledger module, you can do that down here toward the lower left. You can actually click here and add a new vendor directly on the screen. If you choose to do that, that vendor information will not be stored in Procare. It'll just be stored for the purposes of 1099s only. And then once you've reviewed each of the vendors by clicking through them and making sure the information is appropriate or editing anything that needs changing, you're then ready to exit and go on to printing the 1099s in the summary 1096. This works the same way as the W-2 printing works. You'll select a printer here at the top. You'll choose a font. The IRS recommends Courier 12. We'll say OK. You can then print a test page on plain white paper or an actual 1099 if you want to. If things don't line up quite right, you can use the adjust printer setting to move the page up, down, or left or right as needed. Then print another test page until things line up. When you're ready, put the first set of 1099s in your printer, like copy 1 or copy A, and then click on print 1099s. They'll print immediately. If you need additional copies, put in the second copy and then print 1099s again until all your copies have been printed. Lastly, you'll print the summary 1096 form. Here you'll get a screen where you can review the information. You can't actually make any changes here, but you can review what will be printed on your 1096. And then put your 1096 form into the printer, click print, and that's all there is to printing your 1099s and summary 1096 with the Procare 1099 software.